Hi, I'm attorney Bill Bronchick, and a very common question that I get about real estate investing is, how much money should I keep in reserves? That's an excellent question, particularly if you've got rental properties, but it does apply to all facets of the real estate investing business. Now note how I said business. An investment, like putting money in the stock market, is an investment. They're not going to have a capital call in a public company and ask you to put up more money, whereas real estate investing is more like a business that, like an alligator or a lion, if you don't feed it, it will eat you. Okay, so let's talk about the basics. Generally, a business, generally speaking, should have 3 to 6 months of expenses on hand. Now that's generally, if you went to the Small Business Association website of the government, they're going to tell you an answer like that. And some of the factors that you have to look at is, number one, how much cash have you been using? Now, if it's a brand new business, you don't know the answer to that, but if you've been in business for a little while, you'll know. Number two, how much will you need in the future? So looking forward, more importantly, the back is a nice indicator of what the future may be, but if you have other plans for your business, you have to look down the road, the next 6 months to a year. What are going to be the cash flow needs? Number three, what stage is your business at? Now again, if you're starting off brand new, you want to be more conservative in terms of reserves because your business is going to be inconsistent at best in the first year or two of your business. So you want to make sure that you got plenty of cash flow. Most businesses fail in the first year or two, not because they're not good ideas, but they just run out of money. So you don't want to be the same thing in real estate. And then finally, how easy or costly to get access to capital. Okay? So real estate is really no different. If you look at it as a business, these 4 factors will be applicable. How much cash have you been using? How much do you need in future endeavors? What stage of the business you're in? And how easy or costly is it to get capital? And the fourth one being if you have cash reserve in the bank, or if you got a CD you can cash in, you've got a home equity line of credit or a credit line you can tap into, or a spouse who's got a job. Those are all good ways to be able to get access to capital for your business, especially in the beginning when you need it. Now let's talk more specifically. For rentals specifically, those tend to eat up more capital than other types of real estate investments. With rentals, on paper they look good. So, $1,500 rent, $1,000 expenses, $500 a month, that's wonderful. That's on paper. Let's talk about reality. If you have one rental and you're figuring the vacancy rate based upon the market is 10%, okay? If you have one vacancy, you're 100% vacant. Okay? Now, if you have 100 rentals, it'll average out to 5, maybe 10%. The more properties you have, the more the law of averages works. But if you only have a few properties, you have to consider the worst case scenario, if you had all 3 vacant. Now, generally, if you went to a bank and asked them for a loan and you had an existing rental, or you want a new rental, they're going to see that you have 6 months of reserves to pay the mortgage. Not the expenses, just the mortgage. And I think that's probably about right for you if you only have one property. If you have 2 or 3, it might be 4 to 5 months. If you have 6 to 10, and so forth. Now, there's a lot of factors that will go in and out of deciding how much cash flow you need, such as the age of the property. The older, the more maintenance it needs. When it was last updated. What type of tenant you have. Is it an upper scale or is it a lower end, college rental, animal house type of thing? So those are going to be factors you have to consider. Now, generally, in terms of expenses, besides the mortgage, you want to look at for single family rentals, about 25% of your gross will go to expenses. When I say expenses, I don't mean mortgage, I mean taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, management, utilities, advertising, etc. 25%. So if you're collecting $1,000, you're really collecting $750. Subtract your mortgage, and that's more likely the real number that you have to base your cash reserves on. Now, if you're looking at, let's say, for the flip business, it's a little different. So if you're thinking on buying a property, fixing it up, and reselling it, and doing it within 3 or 4 months, don't figure 3 or 4 months. Figure 6 or 7 or 8 months. Always double it, because you know how repairs are. Contractors are always late. Things always go over budget, and they take longer than you think. And besides that, your buyer may, just crap out on you, or get, buyer's remorse and not want to close, or went to a bank and couldn't get qualified, so now you have to have a new one, or an FHA appraiser, said you have to fix X, Y, and Z to make it qualify for the loan, and that takes more time and money, and so forth. So with fix and flips, just be able to handle the cash flow needs of not just paying your existing finances and carrying costs, but figure on twice as long. Now, if you have 2 or 3 rehabs going on, the rule is the opposite of rentals. With rentals, the more you have, the less reserve per property you need. With fix and flips, I think it's the opposite. The more properties, the more trouble you could potentially get into. So if you're figuring on X dollars reserve for one fix and flip, figure double that plus another maybe 10 or 20%. Because if you're putting all your money into 3 rehabs at once, and you're just banking on all of them selling, and they all get delayed, and you have no cash left, you're going to become a motivated seller real quick, the kind that I look for. So make sure you don't get caught in that trap. And just generally speaking, if you're running low on cash, here's some ideas to generate cash for your needs, or to generate a cash reserve so that you can go out and buy rentals properly. 1, sell assets. That could be other properties that aren't performing, or other assets. That old Camaro that's sitting on your front lawn on 4 blocks you've been meaning to fix up, that old Camaro, forget it. Sell that piece of junk. When you get rich, you'll buy a Corvette. It's much more fun. Refi properties. So if you've got equity in your home, you can get a HELOC, or refi a HELOC on your rental properties if you have enough equity. You can get a personal or business line of credit from a bank with your company. It's a little expensive, but in a pinch, it's better to pay 10 or 15% interest than to have to sell off assets at a discount. A loan from your company 401k. A lot of people don't realize you can borrow up to 50 grand out of your company's 401k if you have that much vested. Also, you can borrow against, if you have like a whole life insurance policy, not a term, but a whole life policy, you can borrow against the cash value in the property, and you don't even have to pay it back, and that's a great one. You can get a loan from a friend or relative. You can wholesale some properties and generate some cash or cash reserve for your rentals or your other activities. So, think ahead in terms of your business, in terms of, what am I going to do if things go bad, not if everything goes as planned. Make sure you have enough cash flow in case things don't go as planned, because most of the time they don't. That's the reality. And finally, if you do get in a pinch, pay the creditors first that you value the relationship or it affects your credit. So if you have a bank loan that's going to affect your credit, pay that first. If you have a credit card, pay that first. Now, if you're dealing with like a hard money lender on a fix and flip, that doesn't go in your credit, but don't do that to the hard money lender. Don't go silent. Call them up ahead of time and let them know you might be a little past the balloon date. Otherwise, if you don't say anything, they're going to assume you're in default. They're going to assume you're in trouble. They might start a foreclosure. And after the balloon period goes up, your interest rate could pop. Most notes say you're paying 12%, but if you go in default one day after the balloon payment is due, it jumps to 21. And so if you call first and tell them that, they may be willing to waive that default interest or work with you or give you an extra month. Just keep in communication. Suppliers will understand. Contractors will understand. I've done it more than once where I got tied up in a bunch of properties. My contractor wanted money for a job he just did on my properties. I said, look, we're a little short on cash. Can I pay you at closing in a few weeks? And I'll give you a 10% bonus. And they're usually in for it. Just communicate with your creditor. That's the most important thing. This is Bill Bronchick, and I hope you've enjoyed this lesson on how much cash to keep in reserve for real estate investing.